Flosstube. This is Doris. I'm also known as Windy Bay Stitches on Instagram, and I'm Windy Bay on YouTube. So thank you for stopping by. Today's January 31st, and it is a very, very cold, frigid day here in Northeast Ohio. This is our second day of temperatures, single digits. The good thing is today, the single digit is a positive number, whereas yesterday our high was actually negative. It's the end of January, it's January 31st, and I made a video at the beginning of the month, and when I made that one I talked a lot about my Christmas and shared my ornaments, and I actually, at that time, I had already made a New Year's stitching resolution that I was pretty excited about, and I thought I might share it then, but I also thought I would probably talk too long, and I didn't want the video to get too long, because I've mentioned this a couple times that my goal with my videos is always to keep them maybe 20 minutes or less, because there's so many great floss tubers out there, and there's so much content, and I think hour-long videos are maybe too long sometimes, just in terms of how much time you have available and attention span and so forth. So I really try to keep mine 20 minutes or less, and I try to go pretty quickly through what I'm sharing. Keep the energy up, and of course, if you ever have a question about something I've showed, or if I went too fast, please just leave a comment and I'll be happy to reply and clarify anything. So as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about my New Year's stitching resolution today. And the resolution I made is that I would challenge myself this year to finish things that weren't finished, but the key that makes this maybe a little different is that it's to finish projects that are hard, like to work on the projects that I procrastinate on because they're outside my comfort zone. Because I realize this about myself with stitching and with creating fully finished objects, is that it's always intimidating and uncomfortable if you have something that you're trying to get done, that you kind of have an idea how you want to do it, but you just don't feel confident that you have the skills to do it, or the type of stitching is different, or it just feels a little more tedious because you have to think and concentrate more. Whereas, most cross stitch is generally the easiest type of stitching, because you're just making the same stitch over and over again, and you have to be careful and concentrate and follow the pattern, of course, but it's not the most demanding type of stitching, and I love it for those reasons. I mean, for me, that's like the best type of meditative, relaxing stitching. But I joined EGA about 4 years ago, I think, and over the course of the years, I took different classes. I went to EGA's national seminar once, and I took 2 classes at seminar. I never finished those projects. And then I also have a couple other class projects that were just where my chapter had teachers come and teach us for a day or two. One of them is a Betsy Morgan project. I also had a Deb Tarico project. So I had at the beginning of the month I had basically 5 fairly large EGA class projects that I just never finished. Started them, maybe picked them up once or twice, and then just put them aside. And the reason I didn't get back to them was because of time, and because of not, I guess, sort of being lazy, not wanting to pick up the more difficult project and really give it the focus that it needed. So when I thought about my New Year's resolution, I decided it's time to tackle those projects. And I knew I had at least 5 of those. And then I also wanted to just tackle more FFOing, because I have been doing a lot of full finishing this past year of a lot of my cross-stitch pieces, and I knew I still had several that needed FFOing, and I figured I could intersperse some of the simpler, like more fun FFOing with some of these more challenging projects. So that is what I did. And I thought I might share, there's a blog that I follow. I've been following it for at least 1.5 years, and it's called, it's a website actually, it's called raptitude.com, and it's published by a Canadian writer named David Kane. And back in, I think it was December 2017, he published an article about kind of challenging. He was talking about a way that he wanted to challenge himself, and he put it out there, and he called it the depth year. And the idea was that you would commit for a period of time to go, he called it deeper, not wider. And I have his website up, and I thought, I'll just read a couple of his quotes. He described it as wanting to invent a new tradition, no new hobbies, new equipment, games, or books allowed. Instead, find the value in what you already own or what you've already started. Improve your skills rather than learn new ones. Read your unread books. Pick up the whatever musical instrument again and get better at it. He said, we'll call it a depth year or a year of deepening or something. And then he talks about in the consumer age how easy it is to start new hobbies and shop for new things for your new hobbies. And of course in stitching we have constant temptation with new charts and new fabrics, and when you're in a guild you have a lot of opportunities to take classes and start a lot of new projects, and that's good. I don't think starting new things is like starting new needlework projects is a way of going deeper, learning different techniques, and doing some different types of embroidery, not just cross stitch. That's a good thing. So I liked the depth year concept. I was at a point in life where I was about to, I just retired. I was about to go through a whole purging, downsizing process and moving. And so I knew I needed to get rid of a lot of things. And so the concept of the depth year helped me stop acquiring and also make sure I consumed what I had. And then as I was consuming, I was also purging. So I had probably 30 to 50 unread books that I wanted to read. I read them and I would read the book and then I would donate it. And same thing with stitching now. I'm trying to work my way through, delve into each of the unfinished projects and tackle it. And then when I'm done, I have deepened my skills. And because a lot of these projects, you realize they're about techniques. They're not just about creating a finished object. They're about practicing the different techniques. And then you do also, have a nice finished piece when you're done. So anyway, so there's a little food for thought, I guess, and some background on my process of deciding that this year I would resolve to tackle my unfinished projects, as in particular the harder ones that were outside of my comfort zone. And I also went into this with a good, healthy type of time pressure, but also lots of time to do it. So as I mentioned, I'm retired, and I'm new in Ohio, so I don't know a lot of people. I don't have a lot of commitments yet, and it's winter, it's cold, so January is the perfect time to be able to focus, 4 hours at a time and just work on a project. So that is what I've been doing, and I have managed to finish, drum roll, 11 of my projects. So I'm gonna take you on a tour of those now. So I've got them on a pile on the bed behind me. The first one is actually the Demtrico piece that I mentioned. This was a wool applique and surface embroidery project. It was called Tessa Ritas, and it's a set of accessories: a little box, a pin cushion, a scissor fob, or not fob, a little scissor holder, and a needle book. I finished 3 of the 4. I decided not to make the little scissor holder. I didn't have scissors specifically for it, and after the first 3, I was happy with the end result, and so I'm going to show you that. So this is the box. Now this was a kit. It came with the box. Inside the box I have the other 2 pieces that I made. The pin cushion. So I did the box first, and what we did is we had to cut out some of the pieces of wool, and we had to do all of the applique stitching. Now, I didn't do the best job on this lid. I hadn't looked at the kit in so long. Honestly, I'd kind of forgotten what some of the fibers were. I overlooked the fact that I had a dark blue fiber that I was supposed to be using to outline this large flower, so I outlined it in white instead, which meant I couldn't actually get the effect I was supposed to get on this. But then when I made the next piece, which was the pin cushion, then I used the proper thread, and I did a much better job getting the dimensional effect of the flower and doing the outline stitching in the white on this one. So I'm really happy with how this came out in particular. She provided a little mini tin, so it was a nice way to finish it off. And then the third piece that I finished was a little needle book, and this was similar design on the front, and inside has the colorful felt for putting needles in, and it ties up with a little ribbon. The box was just like a plain brown paper, and I'd used some scrapbook paper to line it just to brighten up the bottom part. So that was finish number 1, and it felt really good to, finish one of those class projects. So finish number 2 was actually my Halloween biscorno that I showed in my previous video, so I'm not going to show that one today. My third finish was this little Christmas ornament, I showed this finished stitching of this in my last video, and I did the FFOing. The one thing that was different for me on this one was adding this rickrack, which I hadn't done before. It took me a few tries to get it to line up just right. I'm happy with how it came out, and it just has a homespun fabric a little in the front and the back, and I think I got the fabric at an antique mall. And then number 4, different season. Now we're in spring. This is an Easter bunny, and the pattern is by the Sweetheart Tree, and the chart doesn't actually have a photograph, it's just the chart itself, so I'll cover that up. It's just like a little postcard chart. And I finished stitching this in 2017, and I made it into a simple flat fold, a mounted flat fold using the Twisted Stitchers tutorial, which is really great. And I embellished it a little bit with this, it's called a cup button, and I had gotten this as a freebie from, I believe it was called the Potomac Bead Company. Number 5 is a snowman, and I love this piece. This is Stanley. Stanley is fun. He's got great colors. He is a pattern by the Trilogy, which I do have to share. I picked this up at, I think at the shop in Ocean City, maybe a year ago. I think it was after my Mid-Atlantic retreat in 2017, I think. So he's so cute. I had found this, again, kind of, what do you call this fabric? Not even weave, like a homespun plaid fabric. So I used that, and then I made the little pom-poms, which I think are super cute to embellish him. And he's just a flat, kind of a flat mount, and I put scrapbook paper on the back to finish it off. And the yarn was actually from like a fibers rummage sale that I got to go to last fall, so it was good to use some of that up. So he was number 6. Number 7. 7 is one of my harder projects again. Okay, 7 is called The Doll's House. This was a EGA seminar project. The teacher was Gary Clark, who is Australian, and it's a surface embroidery project. So we paid for the kit ahead, and the kit includes this little wood sort of mini cabinet, and it has 7 little drawers that come out. And the stitching part of this was these 9 squares were printed on a piece of fabric that was sort of like a fairly high, fairly dense, like muslin type fabric, and it was printed in color. And the stitching was to embellish it, to make it 3-dimensional by adding a lot of stitch details on top of the printed image. So I'll pull a couple and try to bring them close to the camera. So this piece has beads across the top. It has running stitches going through the roof tiles, and then it has some satin stitch around the window trim, and it has the vine stitched on there as well. So the other 2 top squares are similar. And then in the middle, we have the top of the door, which has the lattice work done with straight stitches, and then there's long and short stitching creates the sort of stucco-like texture of the building. And there's all the vines and flowers around the trellis. And to the side, there's 2 windows, and the windows have flower boxes with little, look like roses. So the flowers are generally made with French knots and colonial knots. And then this is one of the bottom pieces. It has more just sort of random flowers along the fence. And the door itself has some texture from seed stitch. And I have a little picture. This is actually the fabric that this is a miniature, image of the whole original piece that we embroidered on. So it was, the size was what you see here, and the 9 squares were separate, and so we did the surface embroidery, cut them out, and then mounted them. I used comic board to mount each, or I may have used sticky board, I can't remember, to mount each of the stitched pieces, and then I painted the whole little case, the drawers, and the whole little case, and this is what it looks like all done. So it's very pretty, and it's a functional, little storage cabinet too. So that was, that's my first ever seminar project, so I'm really proud to have gotten that one finished. So after that one, then I went back to just some more FFOing, and so I also did this, another snowman. I made this at a retreat, I think either maybe 2 years ago. This one is French Country Snowman by JBW Designs. And it's finished with 3 layers of either matte board or comic board, and I had found this kind of sparkly fabric. I thought about doing kind of a quilt pattern on the edge, but I decided to go simpler and just picked a dark print and then this sparkly print and did the layers. And to make it tie together a little bit more, I kind of couched some trim. I had this white with silver sparkle fiber, fairly thick, so I couched that around the edge of the snowman just to pick up the silver here a little bit with the silver in the fabric, but I think the sparkle's not coming up too well on the camera. So 2 snowmen, and next was 3 more complete finishes. This one is a Plum Street Sampler. And this is actually still drying. I attached this with magnets. I actually have this mounted on an old wooden drawer piece that when we moved into this house was built in 1941, and there was an old dirty beat up dresser in the basement, and it was falling apart, so we put it out on the curb, but I kept a couple of the pieces from one of the drawers, thinking I could mount something on it and have it as kind of like a little, you know, memory piece in the house. And I chose this one to put on it because I like the message about make use of present time, because that's kind of my motto in early retirement, is to make sure I'm making good use of the time that I have. And as I said, that's a Plum Street Sampler. It's part of it's a sampler lesson from the cereal bowl collection. Yeah, so that was one of my bigger finishes. I finished the stitching on this probably a little more than a year ago, and I just hadn't FFO'd it. This one, I think I showed the stitching of this before. This was a Lizzie Cate freebie pattern that was given out by a shop in Virginia as part of like a stitch night, and I picked it up actually at a thrift store. But I stitched this probably at least 7 months ago, and I had planned to finish it like this. I just hadn't done it yet, so it's just a little denim pillow, and then I kind of shredded the edges on the top of it. So that's a pretty simple one. And I also have something else that I did show you before. This is my EGA, this was a 35th anniversary commemorative sampler that a friend in the guild designed the pattern for us. And I had finished most of the stitching before. All I did recently was add in my initials and the year at the bottom. And I had picked up this board to mount it on. I painted it the blue. Today I added this sort of red crochet style trim underneath it. And the piece itself, I actually laced it because I'm not sure if I want to keep it mounted like this with no glass or anything forever. And I was also trying to practice my lacing skills, which I used the Twisted Stitchers tutorial for doing a flat fold. Her newer version of it, she explains how she does lacing, so I pretty much followed her guidelines. And I'm intending to put this on with magnets, but I don't have a flat enough magnet yet, but that's what it'll look like once it's got the magnets on there. And the last piece, which I think I actually missed this one, I finished this one right before the doll's house. This is a really old finish for me. I stitched this, I think 4 years ago, and it's a real simple, it's the Bent Creek Summer Row. And yes, I did find this pattern for 10 cents at a rummage sale. Amazing. That was also, 4 or 5 years ago. I stitched this so long ago, and then I had tried to mount it. Originally, I had mounted it with the EGA on the same piece of the wide foam core, but I just couldn't get happy with how it looked. I think I had too much of the EGA showing, and I bought a couple of different trims, and neither of them seemed to work. And then finally, I had cut it down, mounted it on sticky board, made it a lot less EGA showing, liked it so much better. And this is closer to how Priscilla does her mounts with these wide rows. And then it hit me one day, why don't I put it on denim? And then I even got the idea to actually glue these shells on. These shells are all from the Jersey Shore. So the beaches where I've spent a lot of time, where I grew up, they're all collected from there. Some are more unusual than others. These little pebble ones are actually what are called Cape May diamonds, and these are found on the Delaware Bay side of South Jersey. So I was really happy to get this thing finally finished and ready to hang up somewhere. Okay, so that is my 11 finishes for January. So like I said, I'm really pleased with the progress, and definitely been sticking to my goal of working outside my comfort zone, staying focused, you know, going deeper, and, you know, putting in the effort to get those done. So I have 3 more big ones to go. The next one I'm tackling is Ambrosia Honey, which I've showed before. This is the EGA piece that a lot of stitchers are doing all across the country. I've made a good amount of progress. All of the pearl cotton Bargello is done now. And most recently I put in the outline stitching on the honeycomb, which is a metallic, and then I outlined the wings. So next up is to add beads. It'll have beads filling in all the open spaces that you see in the patterns, and then to put a little bit of, I think it's basket weave stitch around the edges, and then it'll be ready to frame. So I'm hoping to finish the beading on this in the next 2 weeks. And so that'll be my next, you know, third of the 5 big finishes. I've been doing a little bit of other stitching. I do have 2 simple cross stitch pieces that I've been working on. One of them you haven't seen before. It's a Better Homes and Gardens Home and Family Sampler, it's called. And this is a kit that I picked up at a little, it was either a thrift store or a little antique store. And I've done a lot on this. I started this in the car when we were traveling over Christmas, and I have been working on this sometimes later at night if I'm watching TV, when I'm, you know, just, it's too far gone. I'm not able to work on something more complex. So I'm about 3/4 of the way done this. So I'm going to try to finish that. And then I'm still working on my Prairie Schooler Santas, which I won't pull it out again. I haven't really done much since the last time I showed that. So it's already, gosh, we're already up to 23 minutes. So I think I'm not going to ramble on too much longer. I'll just share some quick plans. So my husband and I both retired, and our dream for early retirement has been to do a lot of traveling. So we're actually going to be departing on our first pretty big road trip in the next couple weeks. We're going to spend about 8, 9, possibly 10 weeks traveling south through Nashville and Memphis, and then down to New Orleans for at least 5 days. And then we're going to take our time and go through the Southwest. We're going to go across Texas and into Arizona, possibly Vegas, and then hopefully a couple stops in New Mexico and Colorado to visit. We have some family in New Mexico and some friends in Colorado. So we are going to be setting off on that journey by middle of February. So that's also why I've made this big push recently to just get a lot of things finished and not acquire new things. And that's been going well. And, you know, when you have sort of a time limit, it helps you stay focused too. So so I have 2 more weeks to work on those few things I mentioned, and then when we're traveling, my plan for the traveling is to start one or both of these bigger pieces. I have this pattern called Vintage Stars, which is Jeanette Douglas, and I've had this for 3 or 4 years, and I actually bought the needlepoint silks for it, and then I didn't start it. And so that's also in the category of, you know, I've already invested in the materials, and so that makes it, you know, easy to pick this one. And same thing with this one. This is the Kathy Barrick Good Intentions, and I've seen a number of people working on this recently. This is the other one that I'm gonna probably start it before we leave, and then bring this with me. Hopefully I'll be able to work on these in the car, at least on this one, because I'm going to do it on a little bit lower count linen. But they're both using silks, so, you know, these will be, you know, a lot of the pieces I've done recently have been just on EGA, or just, you know, thrift store kits, or, you know, less investment in the materials. These are a little bit nicer materials, so these I would possibly get professionally framed, or at least do more, you know, formal type framing myself. So anyway, so that's a lot of information, and I think I'm going to wrap it up here. So thank you so much for stopping by and spending time. If you're subscribing, thank you. If you're not, you know, please consider, and, you know, would love for you to go back and watch some of my earlier videos where I kind of share a little more about the whole journey we've been on with moving and a lot of my older full finishes, especially a lot of my smalls. So I'm really enjoying Flosstube, and while I'm traveling, I'll probably be taking short video clips of the travel. I might put something together that gives a quick status update of the projects that I've got with me, and then maybe a little bit of the travel. So if you're interested, you know, I hope you'll come with me for the ride, and if not, we'll catch up probably once we get back home here, which will be by the end of April. So everyone take care, and I hope you're staying warm in these cold days and getting some good stitching done. See you soon.